Marina really briefly so that she can give you a quick little tutorial on Zoom. Marina, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, everyone. This is Marina. I'm actually just going to wait a second because I still see people joining. I think Zoom is lagging a bit. But in a few seconds, I will let you know about the platform that we're using today. Okay, so today we're using Zoom webinar to present Housing 101 to you guys. We just have some housekeeping rules, and we want to let you know that this is an interactive webinar. So this webinar is being recorded, so once we have our ETAP website up and running, this webinar will be available in case you want to refer back to it. We ask that you only use computer or telephone audio for this call, which you can, if you're calling in, don't use your computer audio so that there won't be any feedback. You guys, as participants, are currently muted, but this is interactive. So when Sylvia asks that participants raise their hands or calls on you, please raise your hand and we will unmute you. So for participants, the tools that you will need are on the black bar at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a Q&A. So if you have any questions for Sylvia and you want her to address them at the end of this webinar, you can type in your question in the Q&A section. You'll also see that there's a chat box, and if you click that, the chat box will pop up on your right. And this is where you can let us know if you're having any technical difficulties, and also if Sylvia lets us know to type in some of our answers and responses in the chat box, that's where it'll be. And also on the black bar at the bottom, you'll see a hand, and that is how you raise your hand. So if Sylvia calls on your site, or if you have a response and you want us to unmute you, please raise your hand and I will unmute you. And I'll bring it to Sylvia.
Hi, everybody. This is Sylvia Mascarello, and I'd like to introduce Jane. Have you introduced yourself?
I have not, but I'm happy to.
Well, let me give you a moment to do that.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Again, this is Jane Fox. I am the co-PI on this project, and I've had the pleasure of meeting some of you. I've been out to a few sites, and it's been a fantastic experience. I look forward to meeting the rest of you all coming up at the grantee meeting, which, oh my gosh, it literally is just right around the corner. So it will be great to see you then. I want to let you know, we've said this before, but I'm just going to keep saying it for everybody. We're going to try to do a webinar at least every other month on a topic that we think would be of interest to the initiative. So our next webinar is scheduled for June 19th from 1 to 2:30. We're in the process of working with a couple speakers who have experience in working with clients who are currently and recently released from the from incarceration, and so those two content experts will be putting together a presentation and a webinar on that topic. And then I think moving forward, we talked about this at the upcoming grantee meeting. We have a list of things that we think would be interesting, but we really want to float them by all of you and hear what you think would be interesting for upcoming webinars. And I think the other thing that we're really starting to see as we're going out to site visits, which we see frequently on these sorts of initiatives, is that you guys are the experts in a lot of these content areas, and we would love to start leveraging your expertise to host some of these webinars as well. So at the grantee meeting in May, we will have a working session to talk about what we should do for the next year when it comes to these webinars and kind of dive down onto what topics would be of most interest and would be helpful to all of you. Next slide. Oh, look, that's me. So that's
There
me.
you are.
You'll get to meet me live and in person in a couple weeks. So today we are lucky and thrilled to have both Sylvia Mascarello from Liberty Community Services in Connecticut to be one of our content experts on this project as a whole, but also to provide her expertise on this webinar, as well as Aisha Mohammed, who is with HUD. She will be providing some of her expertise today. Both Aisha, I'm kind of questioning, and I know for sure Sylvia will be at the grantee meeting, so you'll get to meet them in person there, and we'll have the opportunity here to do some of this one-on-one work, and then please know that at the grantee meeting we will move into more nitty-gritty work on how to do some more of these specific things with folks in attempting to get them housed. So I'm going to pass this on to Sylvia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that while we are going to be going very shallowly into this subject matter because it's a 101 course, and we're just going to touch the surface on a lot of different subjects and to get an understanding of where each of you are. And then what we will do is drill down on subsequent times that we get together for technical assistance, either at the grantee meeting or through webinars or at your sites or on the phone when we start working on technical assistance. But this will not teach you everything you need to do about housing, but we're going to touch different subjects. So the learning objectives here are to share the current housing experience and expertise at each site, basically to establish a baseline understanding and the population you serve, establish a mutual understanding of housing models that may meet the needs of the people served, and to share models from your experiences, establish, again, another mutual understanding of affordable housing, subsidies, housing assistance, supportive services, entitlement funded, and creative arrangements, facilitate communication between staff at sites, particularly we're looking, I think, at having oftentimes intervention staff at these webinars. So we should see, I see that there's 43 attendees. So there may be many housing navigators or employment navigators on the phone, and those are the intervention staff. And anything else you bring up that we can get to. And again, because this is just touching on a bunch of subjects, we may not get to everything, but we will get to it in the future. Let me just reinforce that if you have a question and you need an immediate discussion on it, raise your hand and we will unmute you and let you, give you a chance to talk, and we can have an interchange. And then we will have opportunities at the end to do question and answer, and we have enough time for that. The first thing, and I'm going to ask Marina for support around this, we're going to do introductions to see who the 48 people are who are on the phone, or for the 43 attendees who are on the phone. So give your name, position, and site, and your housing experience, not just your personal housing experience, but also your organization's housing experience. And again, this is somewhat brief, so try to hit the key points. When your site is called upon, we'll ask that those site attendees raise their hand. Well, actually, we'll just unmute you at that point. And I guess we just want to make sure you're here. So Marina, can I turn it over to you to call the sites? Or shall I just do it?
Could you, Sylvia? I don't have the list on me.
Okay, I'm going to just call the names of the See, I don't have all 43 attendees. But let me start with Adriana Mee. Can you unmute her?
Yes, I just did.
Okay. Hi, Adriana. What site are you from? Well, we're learning something, Marina.
Yes. Sylvia, this is Brenna. So I have the list of, do we want to just call by site?
Yes, that's what I would really like to do, and I didn't want to go through my computer doing it since I'm on share screen. So I didn't want to. So thank you. If you could call the first site and have the person who's, or the people associated with that site, raise your hand so we can unmute you.
Of course, yeah, sure. So from GMHC, are there folks on the line from GMHC in New York?
Yes, Gregory F.
Okay, we're unmuting you, Gregory.
Can you hear me now?
Hi,
Yes.
Gregory.
Wonderful. This is Gregory Fruman, Social Work Case Manager at GMHC with Project Health, our demonstration site in our Coordinated Care Department. We also have a Housing Services Department that, for the purposes of this project, will not be providing a lot of services. For housing, we'll be mostly referring to housing partners or whatever experience we can develop. But our health home staff has a lot of experience with working on housing issues with clients because housing is such a major issue in New York City metro area.
Gregory, that was really helpful and a real helpful way to describe it. So while you already do housing, what you're primarily going to be doing in this project is connecting with partners. Which
yeah,
is,
our housing services at this point in time are fairly specific for specific populations and eligibility. So they won't apply, I think, to many of the Project Health clients. However, we do have a program specifically for folks who are affected by domestic violence. And so that is, inclusion criteria, eligibility criteria for the SPINS project. And so that is one in-house resource that we have that folks could use.
Thank you so much, Gregory. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we mute you again?
No, I'm just real excited. I'm not sure that anyone else from GMHC is on at this time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so next from AIDS Foundation of Chicago. From Chicago, are there folks on the line?
Raise your hand if you are. It looks like we have Roger Fierro. Please forgive me if I didn't pronounce right.
Roger, we should have unmuted you. So we unmuted someone named Dee Gaffney on the participant list who raised their hand, and I'm having trouble allowing Roger to speak because it seems like he's on an older version of Zoom. But I did unmute Dee Gaffney if you want to speak. That's Denise, I believe. Denise, are you on there? Maybe not.
Well, I'm just wondering if Denise is muted on her own phone. Are you, Denise?
Okay, well, we can come back, guys. So next, Fenway Health. Are there folks from Fenway, from Boston, on the line? It looks like Kristen might be on the line. Hi, Kristen, are you there? We should have unmuted you, Kristen. Are you muted maybe on your side?
We just learned something else.
maybe we can try one more and see if,
Oh, Matan is on.
oh, Matan, okay. Matan, can you speak and try to see if we can hear you?
If you can hear us and we cannot hear you, if you use the chat function to let us know, that might be really helpful so that we know what's going on. If you want to try that, if you're having trouble being heard.
Okay, so it seems like folks
I
are,
see 10 chats, hold on. Matan and Sarah were there from Fenway. Why don't we type out the answers? I'm on my phone, but you unmuted my PC. I can hear you guys, but you can't hear me. That was Dee Gaffney. And Kristen said, I'm here, I'm not muted on this side. So if you'd like to, I've just put the chat box on my screen. So why don't we just go back, because everybody has responded in some way by typing. So can we go back to the first site that we didn't hear someone from and let them type in?
yeah, so we heard from GMHC and then we were at AIDS Foundation of Chicago. Are there folks from AFC that could type in their answers, please?
And I just suggest that everybody open up their chat box so they can see the chatting. So it's not just that. So you're all in on it.
Maybe there aren't folks from AFC, so we can move to I suppose. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go to Fenway. Was that the next one? Okay.
Yeah.
AFC, there we go. Okay. And, okay. Is it Denise Gaffney? Can you tell us what your staff experience is too when it comes to housing? Talk about putting pressure on someone, having them type all this stuff. I apologize for that. But I think that what we're going to do is we'll clean up these. We're learning all of our little glitches. So we'll figure this out. Could we please arrange the two all panelists and attendees? I can't see other. I have it set for all panelists and attendees on mine. And I think you have to use the drop-down menu on your own to do that?
Yeah, so just for folks who are typing their answers, Rebecca is suggesting that you make sure it's sent to all panelists and attendees, which is a little drop-down option when you're typing your message, just so that all participants can see what each other is saying.
Okay. So as you can see, what Denise typed was they do not have much experience. She doesn't have that much experience in housing. We'll hope to make that deeper over time. And you do have a program strictly for ex-offenders, which we're very interested. And you have problems with housing sex offenders. That's a subject we'll talk about as well. I think that we all probably share that. So that's thank you for your comments. Our next site.
So now we move to Fenway. Denise was from AFC. Thank you so much, Denise. So Fenway folks.
Okay, so those are, do you have, oh, you do have permanent supportive housing and rental assistance and utility assistance. So you have quite a extensive, yep, you're covering it. And that's all within Fenway's direct services and direct programs? we're going to be leaning on you, Kristen, for a lot of your expertise as well. Okay, thank you so much. That's really, really helpful again. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we move on? Thank you so much. Next site.
So next we have Positive Impact Health Centers. Are there folks from Positive Impact on the line?
Okay, so E. Moore is on there. We'll wait for you to give us your answer, telling us your what you do over there at your organization and what your experience is and what kind of housing you have through your organization. Okay. And does your organization do housing programs yourselves, or do you work with? Oh, great. Andrea has HUD, and you do HOPWA at your organization.
Sylvia, I think it would be helpful if you read out what folks are chatting, because some people are still only chatting directly to the panelists, so other participants can't see.
Okay. The person, Eric, I think it's Eric Moore. He is from Atlanta, and the site is called Positive
Impact Health Centers, yep.
Positive Impact Health Center, sorry, you guys. But he has 5 years of experience working with homeless vets and the general homeless population in Atlanta. Andrea Flint has HUD experience. Their organization does HOPWA housing, tenant-based rental assistant, PHP, Permanent Housing Program. If I'm wrong, you have to type it out for me. STRMU, don't know what that means. You've got to tell me. And gap lodging. Is STRMU some sort of transitional?
That's the STRMU program with at HUD. It's short-term rental, mortgage, and utility assistance.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much. I'm not familiar with that.
No problem.
Is it similar to Rapid?
No, these are for folks who are already in housing, but they are on the verge of losing their housing.
Oh,
so
prevention.
Yes. It's
Got it.
And
Got it. Thank you so much. And that's really helpful. Ours is called eviction prevention and other things we have as well. So we call it a little differently in Connecticut. It's not that we don't, it probably has the same source. But thank you so much. Eric, is there anything else you'd like to add? And thank you, Aisha.
All right, in that case, next we have PRC, the Positive Resource Center. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric might have added a little bit more.
Yes, let me tell you what Eric said. He has they have lots of partners in Atlanta. I'm going to go, hold on. Rebecca wrote down, I think you can see hers because hers is to all panelists and attendees, but Rebecca from PRC's Integrative Health Analysis program helps clients secure housing through strategic partnerships with key players in the low income. Wait a minute, now we're at San Francisco. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's Rebecca went ahead for PRC. That was our next site. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she said it to, I think everybody's able to read this. She's got quite a lot here, but their program helps secure housing through strategic partnerships with key players in the low-income sector in San Francisco. Partnerships include the Mayor's Office on Housing Community Development, Catholic Charities Housing Subsidy and Placement Programs, the Department of Homeless and Supportive Housing, Brilliant Corners, the Q Foundation, San Francisco AIDS Foundation, San Francisco Community Health Center, San Francisco General Hospital Ward 86, and many more. PRC has also merged with AIDS Emergency Fund and Baker Places, which both assist with housing issues as well. PRC has also created an HIV housing case conference, very interesting, where San Francisco frontline workers who work with clients who are HIV positive can bring specific de-identified cases and crowdsource solutions to the client's housing needs. So far, we have had 2 meetings, and we will have our 3rd on April 30th. We're probably going to want to know a lot more about that at our grantee meeting. I know I'm going to bug you about that, so please be prepared. And anybody else, Rebecca, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Oh, and you'll be glad to share information. Thank you. Should we go on? Should we go on to the next? Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, so the next one is Yale University. There are Yale folks on the line.
Ruth Ann has her hand up.
Let's see if we can unmute Ruth Ann.
Well,
Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah,
hello.
So I think Sylvia, I don't know if anybody from Liberty is on, but in our program.
Sarah and Bryce are both on as well.
Okay, so it would be best to hear from them. We do mainly the HIV care and the substance use and behavioral health service care on our side. And then, so we would provide those services and some case management services and Ryan White services. So it's mainly on the clinical side here with some case management. And then we work closely with Liberty Community Services for, in this situation, housing, and well, it also include employment resources for this particular project. But we would work closely with Liberty Community Services and some other housing providers in the city.
And Bryce has written a note here, which is, I'm an employment and income navigator, and that's with the SPINS project. I've worked on making referrals for clients to different housing choices, whether it's for shared living, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, HOPWA, independent living, subsidies, public housing, etc. I've also been part of programs for the past 3.5 years for people recently released from the Department of Corrections. I also help create resumes, help with applications, job assistance to gain income, and help people obtain some sort of housing. I don't have a mic on or the phone, so sorry. He's in a cubicle, and I think I asked him to keep things off speaker because it would come into my office. Bryce, thank you very much, but Sarah, did you want to add anything about us? You could say yes or no here if you want. I can tell you that Liberty I can throw this in because I know this about Liberty. Liberty both provides housing and works with many partners in the community. So it's not, there isn't housing specifically for this project. It will be, Sarah, okay, there you are. So it'll be, Sarah will be doing a lot of development of relationships with housing providers. And I have a no thank you. Here's Sarah. Okay, Sarah's worked at Liberty for 4 years. She's been doing housing navigation. And anything else, Sarah, you want to add? Okay, no, nothing else to add. So we should go to the next organization.
Is anyone from FHCSD Family Health Center San Diego on the line?
And if you're on the line, please raise your hand and I will try to unmute you. If it doesn't work, we'll know that you're typing something if you raise your hand. Okay, so I see Verna, so I'm unmuting you. Hi, Verna, are you there? And make sure that both your Zoom is unmuted on your computer, and if you're calling in, you need to make sure your telephone line is unmuted as well.
And everybody, thank you for being really patient because we had to think on the fly because our first choice didn't work. So thank you. San Diego, if you don't mind my using a shortcut describing you. San Diego serves clients with various housing programs, some HOPWA funded and Ryan White funded. We're currently partnered with Townspeople, which is the largest HOPWA funded program in San Diego, California. Our former SPINS project, on the former SPINS project, we utilized interim housing and permanent supportive housing at Path Connection San Diego. Oh, I'm familiar with Path. We have been preparing for this program by meeting with our partners. We're excited to start this program at this time. We are only waiting for the IRB approval. Our partners are Townspeople for Housing, San Diego Workforce Partnership for Employment, and National Mental Health Alliance, who will assist with payee services and rental assistance. Sounds like you're really well positioned right there. Those are really great partners. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Verna? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so next we have City. Are folks from Kansas City on the line? So Kate.
Yes, Kate has her. Yeah, there you go. Kate, did you want to talk or type?
Oh, Kate wrote something in the chat.
Okay, great. Wow, you guys are all prepared. Thank you so much. This is Kate from the City of Kansas City, Missouri Health Department. We have a long history with HIV grants and programs, specifically in relation to housing. We have 2 long-standing housing programs, HOPWA and Shelter Plus Care. We just recently added a Ryan White transitional housing program, as well as 3 housing demonstration projects that we are working on in our TGA. Describe TGA to me, so I'm not saying the wrong thing on it. I think you wrote something. Oh, transitional grant area, thank you. Our staff and one of our partner agencies, Restart, on this project have a great wealth of knowledge in this realm. For the employment component, we created a new partnership for this project with Catholic Charities and hired an employment specialist in our office to help us get a better understanding in this realm. And TGA stands for Transitional Grant Area. Sarah Rodriguez is also on the line, and she's an evaluation assistant with Fenway Health. She's been there for 2 months. Thank you so much, Sarah. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Kate? Or Dee Adams had her hand up. Thank you so much, Kate. I appreciate it. I know we all do.
So next we have City of Pasadena, if that's it for the City of Kansas. The next City of Pasadena. Are there folks from Pasadena on the line?
I don't see any hands on anyone.
All right, then maybe we'll try the City of Patterson. Are folks from Patterson on the line?
Again, I don't see any hands.
Patterson, New Jersey. All right, then maybe we'll go to San Antonio, Texas. I always butcher your name. I apologize. I want to say Behar, but I know it's not. From San Antonio, anyone?
Oh, we have Anna. Anna is also on an older version of Zoom, so I can't unmute her, but Anna, if you want to type something in the chat, that would be helpful.
I can't wait till we're all in the same room in Washington and we could read body language and know when to talk and raise our hands in person. So I'm looking forward to that. I think this will make it even sweeter.
So Anna, maybe if you're typing right now, we can come back to you since we can't unmute you, but maybe we can move on to the next site to see.
Yeah, so finally we have Avenue 360 from Houston, Texas.
So we have Paige. Paige, I'm unmuting you. Paige, are you able to speak to us?
Hello. Oh, okay.
So Paige, I just muted you. I think you might have some feedback, but if you want to type in the chat, which I see you just did, that's awesome.
Yeah. So she's Paige Kotlerich. I hope I said it right, but you can tell me later. I'm the Clinical Case Management Program Manager at Avenue 360. Thank you, Paige. At Avenue 360 in Houston. At Avenue 360, At Avenue 360, we have several housing programs, including HOPWA and coordinated access through HUD. For this project, we're partnering with AFH Houston to assist our clinic patients with housing and employment services. And just some technical things, I pronounced her name correctly. And Jane suggested turning off the computer mic and the speakers, and the feedback should go away. But Paige, is there anything else you'd like to add? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Do we have anyone else to go to?
I don't know if you wanted to go back to Anna from San Antonio. Anna, are you able to speak with us at this time? If not, we've gone through all of the 12 sites.
Yeah. So Anna from San Antonio and Patterson, we couldn't get people to respond to, but Anna, are you able to type something? Well, I think we're going to go on, and if Anna does type something, we will read it. Okay? So we're going to go through a little bit through this. Some of the things I think, this is going to be knowledge you already have around housing programs, national and state, that are HIV specific. So Ryan White, based upon your local Ryan White plan, you have different types of housing in your area. I know that where I live, Ryan White pays for some housing assistance, some minimal, but not for any larger housing programs. I see from some of the comments that you have made, there has probably a more robust funding through Ryan White for different housing. And if you'd like to share that at the end, we can get to that. There's also some transitional housing under the HEARTH Act, and under HOPWA, there's some transitional housing, and under Ryan White. But transitional housing, when it comes to ending homelessness, has somewhat fallen out of favor with HUD, and a lot of the organizations who have done transitional housing through HUD. And Aisha, please jump in and correct me if you'd like, if I'm off track. But many of us have been reallocating our funding for PSH and rapid rehousing, so permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, because I think you will see a diminishing of transitional housing under the HEARTH Act. However, there are still transitional housing programs funded through other areas because it does have value. It's just that it's not seen as, it's seen as, you know, get into permanent housing with Housing First, with a Housing First model, which we'll talk about more later. Transitional housing is not consistent with getting people into housing now and removing barriers to permanent housing. State departments of housing, there may be an AIDS housing division in your state. I know there is one in ours. And then Hopwood does funding of housing, and Hopwood's requirements are really that you meet a means-based meeting and that you are documented as having HIV. And those are the two major requirements for HOPWA. And as long as housing is available and you have, you know, used the entree in your community for that, that's the way it goes. Aisha, do you want to add anything to that? I'm going to move on to the next slide.
No, you're
and I
correct.
think that's going to be you.
You're right. But yeah, you're correct. Those are the baseline requirements for the HOPWA program, for the person being HIV positive and that being documented with a medical verification form from a medical provider, not just self-assessment. And of course, they have to be 80% of AMI or less to qualify. So on the slide that you all are looking at, it's basically an outline of the HIV care continuum. And to understand HOPWA, it's really important to know about the current HIV epidemic in the U.S. and the HIV care continuum. This actual graph is a good way to explain it, which many of you, I'm sure, already know, but it's always nice to get a refresher. And this is pretty much baseline for the HOPWA program, how we explain the need for housing along this care continuum. So the care continuum is sometimes referred to as the HIV treatment cascade, which is a model that is used by federal, state, and local agencies to identify issues and opportunities related to improving the delivery of services to people living with HIV across the entire continuum of care. This continuum has 5 main steps. The first one there is diagnosis. So the HIV care continuum begins with the diagnosis of HIV infection. The only way to know for sure that you are infected with the virus is to get an HIV test. People who don't know they are infected are not accessing the care and treatment they need to stay healthy. They also can unknowingly pass the virus on to others. So the current state of HIV in the U.S. is of the 100% of people who are HIV positive, only 86% of those folks are actually diagnosed. Once you know you are infected with the HIV virus, it's important to be connected to an HIV healthcare provider who can offer you treatment and counseling to help you stay as healthy as possible and prevent passing HIV on to others. And as you can see, of those who are diagnosed, nationally, only 62% are linked to care. Because there's no cure for HIV at this time, treatment is a lifelong process. To stay healthy, you need to receive regular HIV medical care. Antiretroviral drugs are used to prevent a retrovirus, such as HIV, from making more copies of itself. ART is the recommended treatment for HIV infection. It involves using a combination of 3 or more antiretroviral drugs from at least 2 different HIV drug classes every day to control the virus. And so of the 62% of folks who are linked to care, 41% have been retained in care nationally, and only 36% of those folks are antiretroviral drugs. By taking ART regularly, you can achieve viral suppression, meaning a very low level of HIV is in your blood. You aren't cured, however, and there is still some HIV in your body, but lowering the amount of virus in your body with medicines can keep you healthy, help you live longer, and greatly reduce your chances of passing HIV on to others. So of those 36% on antiretrovirals, 30% have obtained viral suppression, meaning they cannot transmit the virus onto another person, which is key. So this is what it looks like on a national level. Now we're going to go to the next slide, and I'll show you and talk to you a bit about what happens when housing is introduced into the HIV care continuum. And this example that I'm using is based off of New York City. This is data from 2014, and it shows you what happens when a person who is HIV positive is being serviced with HOPWA dollars. So if you look at the first bar graph there, you'll see, and just so you know, the blue line is for New York City HOPWA participants, and the red line is for folks living with HIV/AIDS in New York City in 2014. So you'll see that folks that were linked to HIV medical care who are HOPWA participants were 99.5%, and folks who in New York City who are living with HIV and linked to medical care is 86% of that population. Going down to the next bar, you'll see retained HIV medical care in 2014. So of those folks who are linked to HOPWA services, 95% are retained in care, and folks who are not receiving HOPWA services, only 62% are retained in medical care. On the next bar graph, you'll see folks who started on HIV medication. 92% of those who have started on HIV medication in New York City are linked to HOPWA, and 60% are not. And lastly, you'll see virally suppressed. You'll see that 73% of those folks in New York City who are virally suppressed are linked to HOPWA, and 51% are not. So again, this just shows you that housing makes a difference in a person's ability to have healthy outcomes. Because as you all know, I'm sure, if you are unstably housed or homeless, it's next to impossible to deal with your HIV treatment and to even really, worry about going to medical providers, because your first baseline need is housing, right? But once housing is introduced into the HIV care continuum, outcomes are greatly increased and improved. And as you can see by the example from New York City, people live longer and healthier lives with housing. Thank you.
Aisha, that just reinforces the mantra that we say here, which is housing is a healthcare intervention. It's just that simple. It's that simple.
We're doing our best to raise housing as a structural intervention.
Thank you so much. Those are real powerful slides. On the national level, there's means-based housing, which means it's based upon your income. So there's Housing Choice Voucher, that's the new name for Section 8, which is tenant-based rental assistance. And there's project-based public housing. So you've probably all seen public housing in your area. Mixed income housing development, and access to these resources requires that sites assertively connect with sources for local wait lists, housing authorities, etc. Read legal notices, attend local planning meetings, but this is an ongoing, this is not about HIV or disability, although some project-based public housing can be set aside for disability and or people over age 62, and once in a while it's below age 62 for elderly, but like 55 once in a while applies, but you've got to correct me on that, Aisha. I think I've seen that. But 62 is what's considered, elderly housing typically. And so one of the things I'm really curious about, and if y'all kind of make a note on the chat box, in your community, how do you find out about public housing availability, like Section 8 certificates, like wait lists for public housing, like mixed income housing development? How do you find out about that in your area? And I'll be watching the chat box to see what you have to say. In Georgia, they don't notify. That's terrible. Anybody else? That's Georgia. Thanks, Eric. In San Francisco, we have Plus Housing for people living with HIV. It's a list where people can be paired with subsidies, housing, or vouchers. It's run by MOHCD, Housing and Community Development, the Mayor's Office on Housing and Community Development. Thank you. Through provider networks, they learn and ads in newspaper and online. That's what Kristen has said. Anybody else? In San Francisco, the Mayor's Office of Housing also puts out an email notice about below market rate units that are distributed through a lottery system. Okay, and Paige says, I feel like the clinic gets faxes and emails randomly for some complexes. Gay Men's Health Crisis subscribes to a vacancy list from another supportive housing focused organization. There is also a public website for affordable housing. He's not recalling what it is. I can tell you one little tip, which you probably know. Go on to Google and look up Housing Choice Voucher. Okay, San Diego, we're notified through Regional Task Force on Homeless. In addition, we learn about housing availability via email from various community partners. If you go on, that was from Verna, if you go online to Google and you do a search on Section 8 or Housing Choice Voucher availability or wait lists, you will get all 50 states. It is not, I'll tell you, it is not run by the government, but it does give you a clue as to where there's some open wait lists on that. Also, legal notices are crucial to take a look at. And in our area, the United Way and 211 run in Connecticut, 211 runs a website that shows where wait lists open for Housing Choice Voucher and for anything where a wait list opens and people and the links get you to the applications. In San Diego, oh, we already got you, Fern, I already read that. And also our CAN holds in this area, and I'm going to ask you guys this, does your coordinated access network know vacancies in permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing? I'm just wondering if your CANs are giving you information. Well, I'm not going to hold on to that too long. We'll talk about that in Washington then, because I do want to hear what's going on with your coordinated access networks in your areas. Aisha, is that something you're interested in too?
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. We have to see how developed they are in each community. So homeless-related housing resources. Permanent supportive housing. It is for people who have, oh goodness, do you see what I just did? What did I do? Oh, that you guys can't see that. In permanent supportive housing is for people who are documented as meeting the definition for chronically homeless. It's non-time limited supportive services and up to 100% rental subsidy. Rapid rehousing is for people documented as literally homeless. They don't have to have a disability and they have to be living in a place that is either a shelter or a place unfit for human habitation right now, and it has to be documentable. And it's time-limited, progressively decreasing rental subsidy and time-limited support services. If I'm describing this, Aisha, always feel free to jump in.
Okay, but you did great.
Okay, thank you. Emergency Solutions Grants, they're administered through HUD to municipalities, and they may, in your municipality, be a shallow subsidy, some sort of, they might be used for arrears. It depends on how your community responds to that RFP and security deposits, and then those are then passed on from the municipality to providers. And then there's community-specific strategies that might be going on in your world, and we've heard about a lot of them. Oh, and what Gregory asks, where can we find out about our local CANs? It's the Coordinated Access Network. And do you have a local continuum of care? Gregory, yes or no? Unsure. Okay. What you've got to do, Gregory, have you been working in homeless services? No. Okay. Then I would like to, if you don't mind, I'm going to get your email address. If you can write into Boston University, they can give you my email address, and then we'll exchange contact information. But you've got to go through, just in general, if other people have not been working with CANS, thank you. If other people have not been working with a coordinated access network, it depends upon how developed your community is with this. I know that the coordinated access networks were mandated by HUD about 3 years ago. I think I started seeing them on our grants that we had to participate maybe 4 years ago. And our community happened to embrace it and move very quickly, but we've always been extremely aggressive about adopting HUD direction. You've got to find out what your continuum of care is, and I'm sure you have one of those. Call one of your local shelters to start the conversation and ask them about the Coordinated Access Network. I know that New York City has a one door into shelter and no refusal to shelter, and that gets people into housing. I am sure that your shelter management staff will know about the CANS. That's a relationship that you probably have to start. And that would go for other communities as well. If you haven't been working aggressively or actively in homeless services, a good first start is with a management person at the shelter system. Or, yeah, I know that New York City has a very, very, it's a one door in. And again, they don't refuse shelter to anyone from what I understand and what I've heard, and I've referred people to New York City for that reason. So does that help?
I'm sorry, Sylvia. One of the other places that will be helpful is DHS, Department of Homeless Services in New York City.
Exactly.
If you reach out to them, they actually may be better able to direct him than a shelter manager, because in nonprofits, as you all know, there's a lot of turnover and information is not always passed down as efficiently as we would hope, and this comes from someone who used to work at a New York City shelter, so I'm well aware of that. So I think calling the analyst at DHS will probably be a better first step.
Yep, and actually, that's where I learned about this stuff, about what was going on in New York with shelter.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go, you've got it. Yes, and that's what I looked up when I did that. Very good. We've already solved your problem, Gregory. But I will drop you an email so that we can connect with each other. Let's see, anything else? That's good. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide. There are other ways to solve the homeless or the housing, well, actually the paucity in affordable housing. And we have to look a little bit outside of subsidies sometimes, because there are not going to be, this is the reality that you have to swallow. There may not be enough subsidies for everyone. So we've got to look at different ways. That's why we're looking at income as well on this SPINS project, on increasing people's income through earned income. That's a crucial thing. However, there may be ways to access housing or cobble together housing, and some of you may have already done this, with things like shared housing. If a person is on a, say, disability, and they're getting $735 a month, it is possible to group together, well, in New York City, I may not be saying the right thing here, but I know that in some communities, you can get an apartment, a multi-bedroom apartment, for around $1,500. Are you laughing in New York and Boston when I say that, and DC and Atlanta? You probably are. But there might be ways to group people with their individual incomes that would not support housing alone. The same way we started, most of us started by sharing an apartment. And so that's one thing, and we can talk more about that when we're together, about how to establish a shared housing program and how to group people. Oh, $750 a month for 2018. You think that's what the disability is. And another option might be board and care, but I don't always look for that, but that is a place where a person's disability check would pay for their rent, for their care, and there are other amenities in a place like that. But a person has one room there, and it's not a rooming house. It is a licensed type of a facility. It's called different things in different states. It might be called a rest home, things like that. That may not be an option for everyone. I'm sure it's not, but it might be the option for some people. You can't exclude anything, put everything on the table as you're trying to solve problems with housing. And rooming houses, we've been looking at single room occupancy, and rooming houses, you know, again, they were another type of a structure that fell out of favor in our community. However, they're starting to make their way back, because it wasn't unusual for people to rent a room at one point, and they still have ownership over their living situation because they pay rent and they may have a lease, so they have some rights, and that's an important thing for a person with housing. And just asking, what kinds of ways have you solved housing without subsidies? If you'd like to use the chat box to put some notes up, that would be great. I'm watching. Aisha, have you heard of others?
And well, my experience is a lot with the rooms in New York. We would have clients, maybe 3 or 4 folks in a room on one floor in a brownstone. But in New York, obviously, you have to make sure that person has access, so their door has to lock. You have to have a lock and key. You have to have a lease, definitely a window. There are different habitability standards around. But also with the shared housing, HOPWA also does fund folks who was willing to share a room. Obviously, what the amount, their portion will be based on a pro rata, depending on
Yep.
how many rooms they get, the size of the room, that sort of thing. But that is something that we also encourage.
Yeah, and I see that Eric wrote down roommates, so that's another way that people are doing it. One of the things that we have done here at Liberty is looked at shared housing and trying to screen people, cohorts of people up front to see how their living situations are, and finding multi-bedroom apartments and negotiating with landlords. From Jay Gant. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Jay Gant, while working in a DV shelter, we would encourage those who had low incomes to do a roommate situation while they were working to get back on their feet, so they could see if they can, that would be a way so they could see if they could live with someone. Did you do any work with helping them find roommates? That's a question to Jay Gant. And Rebecca said, we find room and apartment shares using Facebook and Craigslist. A lot of individuals move out of the city too for affordability reasons. Median price for a 1-bedroom in San Francisco is about $3,000. Yeah, that's why I was saying that you guys in other areas there were probably laughing when I talked about a $1,500 3-bedroom apartment. Are any of you doing any help with matching people to share? I'm going to keep watching the chat box as I go on, so if you write something, I will get back to you.
Sylvia, one thing I was just going to add, family reunification is another avenue. Sometimes folks just need to be brought into one room, and maybe they had an argument or a disagreement, and tempers got really hot. And sometimes with the help of case management staff and managers, we're able to talk to families to get people to reunify. That's one angle that may not be used as much as it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting people back with their families or relocating where their families are, if you can start cleaning up some of the burned bridges. That's some of the things that we all work on. In San Francisco, it's also about tapping into the folks' social networks, recovery groups, etc. And I'm assuming that would include family as well, Adriana. And then Jay Gant, I'm sorry, I don't know your first name. They would typically pair up, at the DV shelter, they would typically pair up with women that were currently in the shelter with them to see if they could work together or live together to see if they had a compatibility. So that's a great idea. I had heard about that a little bit more too, with some of the shelters having people who were considering sharing when they left to pair up together while they're in the shelter. And then Adriana added up around tapping into the people's social networks for housing strategies, also to get ideas about housing and that. Rebecca says, for those who are looking to help clients reconnect with family and they don't know where the family is, she'd recommend Miracle Messages. Is that an online program? Boy, we're learning stuff today, huh? It's a nonprofit nationwide. Great. If you've got a link on that, we'll have you send it up to us. So if you can send it to Marina, that would be really grateful. That would be great. And Matan says, for people living with HIV, any thoughts on how dispersing areas where clients get housed affects their access to HIV care? That is absolutely a consideration with any location with people to housing, is where they're going to get any of their care, not just their HIV medical care, but their behavioral health care. And miraclemessages.org, thank you. So we certainly look at that. I can tell you from our experience, and other people can chime in, we do not move people away from care unless we can connect them with appropriate care where they're moving to. Or we can make sure they have transportation that works for them and doesn't keep them out of care. So I don't know if anybody from any of the providers would like to speak about this, but we know that that is not the direction to go, is to get people away from where their care is. Anybody have thought about that? I know that we've had discussions here at Liberty around people's care and where we're moving them, and often our clients are their strongest advocates about where they're going to live, and they will say, I don't want to move out of this area. I have providers here I need to see. So people in San Francisco, as you move further and further out of the city, does that affect people's HIV care? Yes, it definitely does. Definitely. Okay, so what kinds of things do you do to help them mitigate that? Do you provide any kind of transportation or teach transportation use or provide bus passes or taxis or access to medical transport? We connect them to the county health departments and perform research. Usually they move to the East Bay, so we have connections there.
One thing that GMHC has done is cultivate a partnership that provides similar services as we do, but in another outer borough, so that folks who need to continue with support services as they are unable to find housing in central Manhattan can be referred to that geographic service partner, which is Boom Health,
Yeah.
the Bronx.
So it sounds like all of you are kind of on the same page, which is extending your reach through partnerships and research. Like in Houston, we provide transportation via Metro Taxi, and some are starting to use Uber Health. Very interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. And Adriana says, it's about listening to people when they say that they want to stay in their community and being as creative as we can with strategic planning. And it's person by person too, isn't it, Adriana and everybody? It really is an individualized solution. Yep. Okay, great. We're going to have great discussions in Washington. It has to be. Yes, it does have to be person-centered. Aisha, are you okay with my going on?
Yes.
Okay, great. Demonstrating eligibility. Now, those of you who have not been working with CANS, you may not be experts at demonstrating eligibility for any homeless type of services. And it is a little nuanced system. And one of the things that we're going to be doing a few polls. So I'm going to ask a question on homeless programs. The poll is going to be a yes or no answer. Do you have access to the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS? So the poll should be coming up in a second. What do you think of this, Aisha?
I think HMIS is a great system. For HOPWA providers, however, it becomes problematic with confidentiality. So we are currently looking at ways to handle HIV confidentiality within HMIS system.
Right, and some people are doing a little crosswalk between CareWare and
Yes.
HMIS.
Yes.
Yes. Eric, did you, oh, great. Let's see. Okay, so more than half of you have access to HMIS, and we don't know about the folks who did not do this. And Eric, you say no, but we need it. So when we're in Washington, we're going to kind of find out what the resources are there for you, or else you and I may talk on the phone and figure out how to follow that that route to find out about how you can do that. Then there's homelessness programs. Are your staff connected to the CAN, to the Coordinated Access Network, your local entry and exit to homeless services? So here's your new poll. I have to tell you, Aisha, I love HMIS.
I did too well, I still do, but when I used it when I was working as a shelter director in New York, I mean, it was amazing. You can learn so much about your clients before they come to your door, what their needs are. There's all kinds of assessments in there, and obviously for the data on the back end was great then, and it's even better now because we obviously, for presentations and for reports to Congress, we use that data all the time.
Yep.
It just gets a little complicated when, you know, in one community can have 2 or 3 different HMIS systems. So that it gets to be a little complex.
Yeah, and it looks like 60% of you are connected to your CANs, but 40% not being connected means that we've got a little work to do with you guys to give you a little assistance with how to follow that and to see if it's there, to see if you've got a developed CAN in the area. And Paige says it's important to note that my no answers reflect the case management team in the clinic. I'm assuming our housing department does have access. Thank you, Paige. And that might be, you know, a function of what the position is. I see that. And same here for Gregory. Thank you very much. Those are good points. But if we're working on housing navigation on this grant, you know, those are the things that we've got to, you know, at least have a working knowledge on so that we maximize our housing outcomes. HIV-specific HOPWA, Ryan White, and local strategies, those are, you know, to develop the eligibility or to demonstrate eligibility. You know, with that, it's going to be income documentation, and it's going to be the documentation of having HIV, and that's actually very clearly specified on HOPWA. And most programs have very, very well-developed eligibility criteria, and they tell you what documentation you need. For means-based housing, which would be for public housing or for housing that is done in mixed income housing, where certain of the units are set aside for people for lower moderate income, that will be, again, demonstration of what your income is. And disability specific, here's a question I have for you. Are there other disabilities present, you know, mental health or addiction, that may open doors to other housing resources for you? So this is going to be a chat box, please. I can say that in our area, we have housing for people with severe and prolonged mental illness. So if a person has HIV and some mental health issue, there may be housing that we can access for them that's through our Department of Mental Health. It would not be through necessarily through the homeless services system or housing programs. It would be through the mental health system. Anybody else have any kind of disability specific housing that's not HIV specific, like HOPWA or Ryan White or that? And if you do have it, what kind is it? New York City has a lot. Hey, Greg, Gregory, do you mind putting a few examples, typing a few, because it gets us thinking? And in Houston, we have it too, but I'm not sure what the names of the programs are. I'm just curious about what the disabilities are that are specific. There's set-aside units, and this is from Kristen. There are set-aside units for those who are at risk of being in a nursing home. Yes, there's a lot of that going on, yes. And state-funded vouchers for those who are non-elderly and disabled. Okay, got it, that's great. And those disabilities might be physical disabilities, chronic illness. And New York, and I don't know what 1, 2, and 3 are. Oh, New York, 1, 2, and 3 are various programs, serious mental illness, substance abuse. Okay, great. Thank you so much. That is really helpful. And thank you all for sharing. I'm going to keep going. Is that okay with you, Aisha?
Yes.
Okay, great. But if you still want to type anything, go ahead. I will not ignore it. I wanted to touch on the Housing First model because I think it becomes a little bit controversial for some people. And Aisha, tell me if that has been your experience as well. But Housing First is sometimes has a little counterintuitive. It's a little counterintuitive, which is it's typically used in accessing permanent supportive housing in that world. It refers to a low barrier access to housing for people experiencing homelessness. And it does not mean that there are no expectations or anything goes. But many housing providers have had to remove conditions for housing like income. Like they would say, you have to have an income to come into our housing, or if you have a criminal background or any arrests or any of this or any larcenies, you can't come in. You have to be sober for 6 months. You have to be engaged in care. All that is gone. Unless you can make a very, very significant argument for why you have a threshold that is there, like you have a housing project that's within 1,000 feet of a school, well, you can't have a person who's on the sex offender registry living there. That's not something you can control. It is what it is. Or I think there are a couple of, there may be, for my organization, we say we cannot serve a person who has a recent and persistent pattern of violent behavior. And that is not addressed because we don't really have the expertise to do it and we can't safely provide the service. We do encourage, we don't say no forever, we just say, you've got to address the issue. And here's ways that you can do that. So it doesn't mean we have to serve anyone who gets presented to us. It just means that if you don't have a sound rationale for why you cannot do that, it's not necessarily acceptable. But what we have found, which is very, very interesting, and it may be counterintuitive, but by removing those barriers and getting people into housing, the model has about a 95% success rate at housing retention. That's been our experience here. We do not lose people to homelessness very easily. We kill ourselves to keep them housed. Is that not true, Sarah and Bryce? You know, you guys definitely know that. And I see that there's a comment from Eric, Housing First is a great concept if you have the financial backing to retain and maintain the housing in the face of barriers. This is, I think, a subject that we're going to explore further and talk about how we can create that type of support or what approach might be to do that. We think the key is within the case management end in looking for problems before or looking at what can happen. And then even in those, even if you are on high alert all the time, things can still get out of control. And you can lose a relationship with a landlord and lose the person as well. But
I think right, Sylvia. I think case management is key. I mean, if you're going to implement Housing First model, I think your aftercare program has to be well developed. and you're going to need folks to be able to check in on those folks in the community, be able to, even if need be, escort them to their appointments, to get them linked to care shortly thereafter their house. So it you know, it can't just be something that you just, you know, put people in a housing unit or a program and walk away. You have to stay connected if there isn't supportive staff on site.
Yeah, you can't do the place and pray model.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
doesn't work. And you also have to recognize the reality of your work. We do not go to people's homes that we don't know very, very well without going in pairs.
Yes.
We don't try to, oftentimes if you show up unannounced, you're going to create a problem. We try to show the respect of saying, we're on our way over, we'll bring a cup of coffee with us. You know, what do you want in it? Cream or sugar or anything like that? You know, something to make it, you know, a little more positive that way. And like I said, it's not anything goes. If a person doesn't pay their rent the first month, you've got to put an expectation on, because your lease is the crucial document. So this is a poll for a yes and no. Have you implemented the Housing First model at your work? Yes or no? I like the polls. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so it looks, it's 50-50. Very interesting. So we're going to talk to both halves of you when we're together at some point, you know, as we go through this. And I've got a question for you also, although I didn't put this in here, but I want you to think about it. And when we see each other, would you like to go deeper into Housing First model to talk more about this and strategies? And we can talk about that in Washington, or you'll have a chance to, you know, send in some notes afterwards about things you'd like to pursue deeper. And you want to discuss, we'd like to discuss some of the challenges and successes in Housing First. Obviously, I don't think we're unmuting your phones. Oh, you'd like to go deeper into Housing First? Thank you, Jane Fox. So we'll put that on our list of things to do, because I think that that's a subject as well that we need to have people learn from each other. Because I think a lot of us have gone through the transition. And yes, please, more. Thank you, Frank. More on Housing First. Does anybody want to make a note of some of the challenges or successes they've had in Housing First? I'm going to give well, this might be a long answer, so I'm going to wait just a couple more minutes, not full minutes, but sort of minutes, not literal ones, figurative minutes. If we go on to the next slide and you have put up an example, we will read it. It will not be ignored. I just want you to know. So we will go to the next slide, but if you put up a note, we will. And we heard we want to go deeper into Housing First. The supportive housing model, I believe, is a hand-in-hand with Housing First, because it is kind of the strategy to have successful Housing First program. And what the supportive housing model is a partnership between three parties, which is the tenant, the social service provider, and the property manager and or landlord. That is the team, because our job is to keep that lease. I hate the word compliance when it comes to services, but you have to have the person keep within their lease. That is their program. If you need a program plan, the lease is the program plan. And a person needs to understand that. They need to also clearly understand how much their rent is. That's why we talk about you guys using the CPD calculator, or the HUD rental and income calculator that's on the HUD exchange. And is it the CPD exchange or the HUD exchange?
The HUD exchange, and you're right.
The HUD exchange, yeah.
We also have a specific one for HOPA programming. Yeah, they have a specific one, but we can play with that one to change the income requirements, because it gives you options. So we use it for all of ours. Great. And call it a HOPWA type of a rental subsidy. But what we do is you end up with 3 documents that you and your client sign.
Okay, so this crucial partnership, there are specific roles for each. It doesn't mean that you go up to a landlord and say, hey, my client has HIV, and sometimes they're not going to be well. Obviously, we're not going to disclose things like that. But it's about creating a partnership, having the landlord understand that they're going to get paid every month, this amount of money from you, this or from HOPWA or from wherever the place is that writes the check that probably doesn't disclose. I'm sure we've all gone through, didn't know how to actually work with all providers who are paying HOPWA rental subsidies to change the name that was on the check so it didn't disclose HIV status.
Yes, we did
Yes.
have notice that went out for that.
Yeah, we did, that was a few years ago that happened. So typically a check will come from a place that does not disclose a person's status. And but what you want to do is make sure that the landlord knows that they're going to get a check on a certain date of every single month from you, and the tenant is supposed to pay this amount. You're going to go through the lease with the person. Who's responsible for what? How do you get a hold of the landlord? You all know this stuff, but this is really, really deep, what you have to get into. And sometimes you misread a landlord and think they're one type of person, and they turn out to be the opposite. Sometimes they seem really horrible at the beginning, and they might be your best landlord ever. And the nice ones might be the biggest nightmares you ever found out about. But we certainly share with all of our providers when we have bad landlord experiences, like a landlord who does not keep a place habitable, like they lie at the front end. You've seen it, you've inspected it, it passed the inspection, but they let it go and they don't keep it the way it needs to be. So we, so we hold everybody's feet to the fire on that lease, including our own, because our jobs as a social service provider or the housing case manager or one of those, anybody who's supporting a person, is to keep them housed and to have them pay their lease and pay their rent so they stay on their lease and not have people move in with them unless they can put them on the lease and get permission for everything. So the supportive housing model means that there's guidance for the roles. It has to be tied to leases, tenant handbooks, and policies. And we have a lot of resources for you and tools for you that we're going to be having in Washington that will be helpful for you on this, and we'll be able to get more. So have you implemented a supportive housing model? Yes or no? Okay, so the better half of you, 54% of you have. Great. That's wonderful. And those of you who have not, you've got a lot of resources when you get to Washington to talk about that. Thank you very much. I just closed that. Here are some suggested subjects for the future, okay? We're going to put it on a poll. Background and credit checks, how to mitigate the impact of problematic reports with landlords. Yes, just fill out the poll, what you think is your #1 priority. Rep payees, housing first, shared housing as an affordable unsubsidized housing. That means roommates and stuff. Supportive services, engaging the right stakeholders. So let's see what you guys have as suggestions. And then you can use Q&A to write some more suggestions. And I know we're not going to get to more questions today because we are at the end pretty much. Okay. So, all right. Very helpful. Thank you, everybody. Does that seem to, that's great. Okay, we're going to move on to the last, I think the last slide. Nope, we don't have time for questions and answers, guys. I'm sorry. And here's some links that I think that we can send you in an email so that they're usable links to get you to some of the things that are helpful tools for you. And then I just put the Hearth Act here, a little information about that. What a hearth is, you'll hear it. And I think we're calling it a day. It is 2:30. You may email me if you have questions. You're more than welcome to call me or email me. and we thank you. Jane, anyone want to come on and say goodbye?
Yes, thank you so much. Tons of information. I think we learned just as much as we taught, for sure. And thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you soon in DC. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Take care.